Hello everyone, this is Vinay here from Learn Coding with Vinay, and this is part 3 of the video series Career in IT. In the previous video, we discussed career options like full stack development and front end developer. In this video, we will discuss about mobile application developer and backend developer. So let's jump into the video. So let me move ahead with the mobile developer option, career option, right? So let's understand what does a mobile developer do on a day-to-day basis, and what does if you are choosing a career option as mobile developer, that what are the things that you will be doing on a day-to-day basis in an organization, right? So let's say you will be working on a mobile application, maybe developing a new application altogether, or create a new module or create a new feature in the existing application, right? Typically this will involve coding, testing, bug fixing, storing data locally if your application supports offline capabilities, right? And what is offline capabilities? That if you might have noticed that there are many applications which supports offline capabilities. So whenever if there is no internet on your cell phone, some of the applications still allows you to do some stuff, and whenever they get the internet, so they must have given us the option to go online. Once we hit the go online button, everything what we have done, that will be pushed to the database or application server, and it will be ultimately saved, right? So those are the things you will be working on primarily, right? Another thing you will be working upon primarily is the integrate APIs, because mobile applications are heavily dependent on APIs. Now, what is an API? API is an application programming interface. Primary job of an API is to bring data and give it to the mobile application, and collect data from the mobile application screen and give it to the application server or database server, right? Now, what we discussed, that you might be working on the existing application, new features or new module. Now let's understand this by a WhatsApp example. So if you remember, WhatsApp was initially launched with only text and image sharing, right? Later on, they made many enhancement, many features available, like now we can attach a document, we can attach video, we can even generate poll, we can share our live location, right? And nowadays we can do even payment also using WhatsApp, right? So once the application is launched, there are continuous changes coming up based on the user experience and based on the ideas, new ideas coming up, right? So mobile application always keeps on evolving, right? So depending on that, either you will be working on new mobile application, or you will be working on the existing mobile application work on new feature or new modules, right? Now let's move to next task here again, that deploying application. Now what is mean by deploy application, right? So over here you might be involved in deploying your mobile application on various stores like Google Play Store, Apple Store, right, Microsoft Store, or sometime even application are available directly from the website itself, right? They may not be available on Play Store, but they are available on their company's website, right? Now next one is the next day-to-day task would involve technical support. There will be see, user might report some issues, that something is not working for them, login is not working, or whatever other stuff, right? So you will have to look into it, what is the issue, basically debug and fix the issue, right? Then some of the common tasks involve prepare and maintain documentation, technical documentation, diagram, and maybe database diagram, diagram, or maybe a class diagram, right? Then collaborate with team, understand the project or module requirement, discuss with your team members, discuss with your project managers, right? And then ultimately convert it into a mobile application feature, right? Then optimizing, obviously over a time of period, if there is a lot of data pushed in your data in your application, then you might have to work on optimization, optimizing performance of the mobile application. And last and not but the least, then stay updated with the technology trends. That is the commonly I have written in every career option, because we are living in a changing world, and IT world is changing so fast. So if we talk about current situation, that every organization is actually expecting you to carry out whatever task listed over here using AI agents, right? So use ChatGPT, Google Gemini, or whatever your favorite, or whatever your organization has bought the subscription for. use it and try to achieve this, with minimal effort and even reduced amount of time, right? So using AI is must nowadays, right? So I'll move to the next slide. So this is nothing but just the pictorial presentation of what we discussed, the primary responsibilities of a mobile developer. As we said, developing mobile application, integrating APIs, debugging, testing, technical support, deploying to stores, right? Preparing documentation, all those things. So let me quickly move to the next. Now, if you want to become a mobile developer, now what options you have, right? So there are primarily three options available. You can become an Android application developer, you can become an iOS application developer, or you can choose to become a cross platform. Now, what is cross platform over here? If you are working in one of these four technologies which are listed below, Dart, Flutter, React, PhoneGap, Xamarin, then you can actually develop a single code base, and using that single code base you can develop both application, Android and iOS, and even I think Windows also, right? But Windows is not that much popular nowadays, so I have not kept it over here, right? So you can become either an individual, dedicated one kind of developer, or you choose to become a cross platform developer as well. Now, in my opinion, you should go for the cross platform development nowadays, right? So you can develop both, because earlier it used to be, there are any business, they launch their application, they, let's say, let's talk about a banking application, right? So we bank does not know which all users, which all kind of users and which devices they are using, right? So they had to develop Android app and iOS app, and they had to have an Android team separately and iOS team separately. Even nowadays there are good chances that people will have the separate team for Android and iOS, right? And there are good chances that people will have the cross platform guys also, right? So they can write, they can just write one code and that can be used in both of the application, right? So all these three options are very popular. You can choose any one of them, right? Now, if you choose any one of them, then what are the tools and technology, what are the programming languages that you should know? That for Android you should learn Kotlin or Java. Now, earlier Android code was written in Java, but now it has been taken over by Kotlin. So I would not suggest to learn Java if you are, trying to become a mobile application developer. Kotlin will do for you, but that doesn't mean that you should, ignore Java. At least you should know some stuff of Java, programming fundamentals of Java. So that will be, it will be easier for you to work whenever, if some application is developed using Java and you will have to uh, code your stuff in Java, right? And the next one is iOS, right? If you want to become an iOS developer, then Swift is the thing. You should learn Swift. Earlier Objective C was, very popular, but now it is Swift, right? And if you are planning to have a cross platform, career in cross platform development, then Flutter and Dart is the, most popular now. So Flutter and Dart, React Native, Xamarin, and C Sharp. So Xamarin and C Sharp are actually Microsoft offering for mobile application development, right? Then you should also know how to, how does these two database work, local databases, SQLite and Room. Because if your application supports offline capabilities, there are good chances they will be using SQLite or Room database. Now these are the programming languages. Now if you are choosing one of these, then you might be, have to deal with this tools and IDE on a day-to-day basis. For example, if you are working on Android, there are good chances you will be developing your application in Android Studio, right? If it is iOS, then there are good chances you will be working on Xcode, right? For cross-platform, VS Code and Android Studio are the, popular IDE or tools. GitHub is a very common thing. I have kept it everywhere because version control, keeping your code in a version somewhere stored so that you can retrieve older code also, and that's a very common thing in every application, be it web application, mobile application, or even any other application, right? So that's important. So these are the, symbols you should remember if you want to become one of these, and you will be dealing with day to day life. As I said, this video series is strictly for the beginners. So if you are a senior, you have already worked upon these tools, you might not, find this so helpful. But again, for a beginner, these are the things you should remember, that if you are choosing your career as a mobile application developer, then just try to remember these symbols, because these are the things you should learn. These are the things you should be you should be aware of, because that's what you will be dealing in your day to day life, right? So let's move to the next one, which is a back-end developer. Now, what is a back-end developer? Right. So let's understand this a very common architecture diagram over here. You know, so we have various clients. Now, when we say clients, clients are not users actually. Here, clients are devices, various. For example, GPS device, Apple device. This is, let's say, some web browser. Let's say Android device, right? Or any, right? Let's say smartwatch, fire alarms, right? Any your Fitbit application, right? So those all interact in the background with API. As I said, what is the primary purpose of API is to work as a bridge between your client application and server, right? So API, what API will do, they will take the request from these devices, you know take it to the server and revert back with whatever request was made, right? So where do a backend developer code rise? So over here, backend developer are involved in writing APIs, business complex logics, and dealing with database stuff. Sometimes backend developers are also referred as just the database developer. They will be only working on database scripts. They will least bother about these APIs and business logic layer, right? But nowadays the popular one is the guy who can handle these three: writing APIs, writing complex logic, and database stuff, right? And these are your UI components. So we discussed already that what a front end developer will do. So over here, if the organization has decided to keep teams separate for front end and back end, then the front end developer will only work on the UI part of these particular devices, while the back end developer will be developing APIs and business logics and database stuff, right? So I hope this will give you a good idea what is the purview of a backend developer in software industry. Right. So let me move to next slide, where we'll take an example of the famous this restaurant example we discussed in the previous video also. Over here, let's consider front end as your customer and your tables and chair where they sit for dine, right? Then your APIs actually are waiter. What do waiter do? That guy will come to the customer. They'll ask for what kind of order they want to place. They'll take the order. They'll take the order into the kitchen and they'll give it to the chefs, and chef will prepare the order. And once the order is prepared, again waiter will come back and serve it to customer. So here waiter is actually your APIs, right? So their task is to interact with customer and backend chefs. And similar in the software industry also, API works in similar way, right? Now, what does a backend developer do on a day-to-day basis, right? So if you want to become a backend developer, what are the tasks that you will be doing on a day-to-day basis, right? Then develop new web APIs, maintain existing APIs, writing business complex logic, developing database stuff, right? Store working on store procedure, query optimization, and typically all these point will involve coding, testing, debugging, troubleshooting, committing code to code repositories, right? Then another most important task backend developer will be doing for is to ensure your data integrity and ensure that your APIs are secured. And popularly methods are using JWT authentication and OAuth authentication. However, there are a lot of other method also, like using Azure Active Directory, or sometime using some other third party integrations like Okta, right? Next will be collaborate with front-end developer to integrate APIs in web and mobile and web applications. Right now, API developer will have to continuously interact with front-end developers, because front-end developers may need to pass one more parameter or may need some extra data from the database when they made a request. So there has to be a thorough discussion carried out between the teams, that what is needed, what should be input, and what should be output of an API. Right? So backend developer will have to work very closely with front end developers, right? Now deploy APIs and database object to the respective servers, prepare documentations, diagrams. That's a very common task in almost every career stream, right? And the last and the least, not the least, but right? Stay up to date with your current tech stacks, right? Learn new things. And as I said, to achieve all tasks listed over here, start using AI agents, chat GPT, Google Gemini, or whatever is preferred by your organization. you know that will help you to turn around things quickly, right? So start using APIs, sorry, start using AI agents. Now again, this is again the same pictorial presentation of what we discussed. And what do a backend developer will do mostly nowadays? Development of API and handling database stuff. These two are the primary responsibilities of a backend developer. Then the other responsibilities are always there. They are part of these two only, like developing documentation, deploying, maintaining code repositories, and all those things. So you can pause this video, check out this image if you wanna dive more into it. Now, if you opt to become a backend developer, then what are the skills? What are the tools you should require? Right. So now when we talk about APIs can be written in multiple languages. Right. So I have listed few popular over them, that the C Sharp and .NET Core, right? Node.js, Python, Java, Ruby, PHP, Golang, Rust, and Scala. Right. So you don't need to know every language of these. You can choose one of these as your backend programming language and build your career upon that. And you can become just a .NET API developer. You can become a Node.js API developer. You can become a Python API developer. Right. You just need to know one language out of this. And based on the language, these are the tools that you will be dealing with. If we talk about ASP.NET Core, mostly it will be Visual Studio. Right. If we talk about Java, it will be either IntelliJ IDEA or Eclipse. And if you are working as a database developer, then SQL Server Management Studio, MySQL Workbench, Oracle, PLSQL Developer. It can be anything. And again, a good thing about database is then, as a developer, if you are working on queries, right, which will be your primary task if you are working as a backend developer and handling just database stuff, then if you know one of these, either MySQL, MSSQL, Oracle, then you can work on pretty much every other, because SQL will remain same for most of the RDBMS tools. There are hardly, I would say, 5 to 7% changes, syntax changes. And otherwise, if you know the concept of RDBMS, if you have worked upon any, either MSSQL, MySQL, or Oracle, then you should be able to work on the others, right? I have worked on these three extensively: MSSQL, MySQL, and Oracle. So I know it very well, what is there, right? Now the next thing, as a backend developer, you should be concentrating is to use these API testing tools. So once you develop your API, you need to test it to make it concrete, whether they are working or not. So as a developer, you might not be doing testing hard codedly, or this is not your primary responsibility, but at least you should know how APIs are tested, because this part particularly lie in the tester's purview. But still, as a backend developer, should also know all this, how to test their APIs, right? And the popular tool are listed over here, Swagger, Postman, Soap UI, Blazor Meter, Catlon, Apache JMeter, Epigi, Karate Labs, Rest Assure. There is, in my time, we were using Fiddler also, so that was also very popular, right? But the thing is, these are the tools to test your APIs, right? So depending on an organization setup or whatever, you, a developer may not need this, but I would say that it is nice to know these tools, and not every, at least one or two. I think, in my opinion, if you know Postman, should be good enough, right? So I hope this gives you a good idea about what a mobile developer do, what a backend developer do, right? So in the next video, we will discuss about desktop application developer and tester or quality analyst. Right. So till then, goodbye and see you in the next video. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching this video.